What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Homie Hangout, where we help others move in excellence. And what happened earlier was is bullshit, right? Really, it's out of pocket. Uh, Putting out fake paperwork on people is wrong. I've been consistent about that. I don't think that that should be a controversial opinion. You don't like somebody, you don't like somebody, right? That's fine. But again, putting out fake paperwork is a step too far, right? Way too far. And in my view, at least, that's exactly what happened here. So somebody did a video, they tagged Dubs in it, and they cut out little sections of some paperwork, right? Little boxes, couple words here, a couple sentences there, whatever. And it was cut from this document, right? Which is very real paperwork. It just really doesn't have anything to do with Dubs, right? Same last name, different first name, just not him. And it's not a case of, oh, this was a mistake, right? I moved too fast. Now, I think if you do make a mistake like that, you still need to be held accountable. It's out of pocket regardless. And as people with channels, we have a responsibility for the content that we put out. Uh, but this isn't even that, right? This is very intentional, deliberate. Like it took time and effort to put together. And I just don't get, like, there's a weird, almost like romantic fascination. I don't know. Uh, but I'm highlighting that, right? This video kind of has two purposes. One is just to sort of call bullshit because it was weird. The other one though is I've been floating the idea of talking about my time in the shoe, talking about being validated, kind of what that process is like, the legal side of it. Um, and this case is actually a really good example of what was pretty common at that time. Things are different in the California Department of Corrections now. There's no more indeterminate sue, the validation thing. It's all very different. So this doesn't give you insight into today, but there was a long and very effective, very influential season in the California Department of Corrections in which stuff like this was routine, right? And so this is my only video for today. I had some other stuff going on, and maybe I'll go live tonight when I get home. We'll see what time it is. But other than that, I'll be back on the grind tomorrow with multiple videos a day and that sort of thing. But so since it's my only one, like I said, I figured I'll cover both angles and give you guys a little bit of insight into this validation stuff. And then if you're interested, let me know and we can talk more about it in the future. So Robert Villa. I don't know who he is. Obviously, they had validated him as an MA associate. I believe he's out of prison now. Hopefully, he's doing well in his life. Robert Villa filed a petition to writ of habeas corpus to challenge his validation as an associate of the Mexican Mafia prison gang and his placement in the administrative segregation unit at Centinela State Prison, and later California Correctional Institution at Tehachapi. That's the SHU. So, how do you get to this habeas corpus part, right? And I'm not going to read through everything on here. I will post a link to it in the description so you can look it up yourself. But when you get validated, part of the way that CDCR would get around the regular constitutional due process stuff is they would say, hey, this is just a housing thing. It's just classification. It's just administrative. So we kind of get to do whatever we want, right? And so you get validated, you got to go through the internal appeal process, right? Write 602s, which is just a form number. You write 602s, you go to hearings with different CDCR staff. And once you exhaust those, then your only other recourse now is to go to court, right? To file a civil claim. And so that's what this is. And it's a process that I went through that a bunch of us did in trying to get justice, really, and trying to get out of the shoe. So Villa argues that his possession of a validated Mexican Mafia associate's chronos was permitted by the Title 15. Title 15 is the rule book for everybody doing time in California, right? Gets updated every year. They give you a copy. If you mess up and you get a write-up in prison, you're getting a write-up for violating something in the Title 15. But he says it could not serve as a source item to validate him as an associate of the Emir. In addition, he contends a confidential memo, which does not connect him with a specific validated gang member or associate, is insufficient to establish a quote direct link to any former or direct link to a current or former validated member or associate of the gang as required by the Title 15. We agree with both of Via's contentions and thus grant relief. Uh, so that whole connecting direct link to a current or former validated member or associate, that came later, right? This was, I think, 2012 that he was filing this stuff. That didn't used to be there. But to be validated, you need three independent things, right? CDCR has to have three things that show, according to them, that you're a member or an associate of a prison gang. It could be tattoos, it could be confidential information, which is the most common. It could be write ups, it could be chronos, like this dude's out there busting down on the yard and doing this military cadence. It could be a bunch of stuff, right? And they need three to validate you. Then, thanks to jailhouse lawyers, uh, they added that one of them needs to be a direct link. So one of them has to tie you to a specific individual who was or is validated. And so he's arguing that this doesn't do that. And the court agrees. V has been incarcerated in CDCR since 2005. He had a J number. In February of '09, he was moved to Centinella's ADSEG, the whole pending investigation. That's normally how it would go, right? They snatch you up off the yard, they bring you to the hole, and they say, we're going to sit on you for 6 months while we try to put together this validation packet and send it to Sacramento and whatnot. Uh, in March, the IGI concluded its investigation and found that there was sufficient evidence to validate him as an associate of the inmate. They said they had four source items. The first source item is a greeting card with a drawing made by another validated gang member that was found in Via's possession. The front of the greeting card displays a drawing of Aztec artwork, and on the bottom right corner of the drawing was signed by Garcia. The back of the greeting card displays another drawing, which is signed Furman on the bottom right corner. Under the drawing are the words Arte by Furman Garcia. Furman Garcia has been a validated associate of the Mexican Mafia forever. No, not. It is currently housed in Pelican Bay. So the dude's been validated for a long time. He's been down, shit, almost as long as I've been alive. He's not in Pelican Bay anymore. I think he's in Folsom. But understand here, CDCR's argument is those who are validated are the worst of the worst. These are the most dangerous, the most violent, the most sophisticated criminal organization and prison gang members and high level associates in our prison system in California, right? And that is why they need to be housed in these conditions in which you never come in physical contact with another human being unless you're shackled, unless you have a cellie, right? But other than that, you never physically come in contact with anybody unrestrained. If you're in the Bay, you'll never have sunlight touch your skin, right? If you're in Corcoran, you have way too much sunlight when you get put on them dog cages. But um, and this is all justified, right? Because you are so dangerous that you're validated. Uh, Conditions that most international bodies that have looked at it have said absolutely is cruel and unusual punishment. It is tantamount to torture and is illegal in most areas of the fucking world. But no, in California, this is what we need to do just for these people that meet this certain criteria. And then to prove somebody meets that criteria, everyone's like, got a birthday card. You got a birthday card. Look who drew the fucking picture on the card. Bam. Smoking gun. Like, it's ridiculous, right? It's not logical. It's ridiculous. So I used to hear about that. I didn't realize just how common it was until I was validated. And I would see other people's validation paperwork, and I was like, holy shit, dude, you're really getting dates. Now, mind you, back in the days when you were validated, if you had 15 to life or 25 to life or 5 to life, you were never getting a parole date. They weren't giving out parole dates really anyways, but you were for sure never going to get a date from board if you were validated. It wasn't going to happen, right? Wasn't just, oh, usually not. No. You did not get a date if you were a lifer on an indeterminate sentence and you were validated. It just, the conditions were out of pocket. It was foul, right? And most people that have looked at it agreed. And yet there's a lot of folks validated behind the kind of stuff that they validated Via over. Robert Villa, to be clear. So So there's one. And it says, in reviewing the first source, the investigator noted that Via's possession of the greeting card in his personal property is indicative to Via's association with the inmate. The second source item is a sketch, right? It's a sketch that was found in Via's possession bearing the, oh, here we go, Nawa words, my favorite. Batlak Klomei, if I remember it right, symbol, right? Campo was kind of the slang term for it, which is a symbol commonly used to indicate a person's allegiance with and or loyalty to the Mexican mafia. Now, this symbol is just the number 13, right? And it's a lot of times the Mayan way of doing math, right? Which is a solid line is a 5, a dot is a 1. And so you see 2 lines and 3 dots for 13, or 2 lines and 4 dots for 14. Um, and that's just the Nawa word for 13, right? So that's what they're saying. The 13, right? Specifically in this, drawn in this fashion, right? That shows that your allegiance or loyalty to the emir. And again, it's not, you don't get validated for being a Southsider, right? You don't get validated for being a Northerner. Those aren't prison gangs. Um, 13, pretty fucking common amongst a lot of people. It does not mean that every one of them is corresponding with a made member, right? Or even knows any, obviously. In reviewing the second source item, the investigator stated, it is not reasonable to believe that Villa would maintain these symbols in his personal property. It's the fucking number 13. Without knowing the meaning and significance of these symbols. Possession of this sketch, just this drawing, indicates that he associates with the symbol and those individuals who associate with it. So it's tricky language, right? Because if you strip it down to the bare basics, he associates with the number 13 and other individuals who associate with the number 13. True, and I get the lineage of the number 13, but in modern day, if you see some kid walking down the street with a 13 on him, do you automatically assume that he's a member or associate of the Mexican mafia, or you think he's a Southsider? Right? It's a stretch, and they know it's a stretch, and it's this stuff that applies to a huge number of people that they selectively pick and choose when they want to snatch you up. The third source item consists of 128 or CDCR 128 B2s, or Bs, not B2s. CDCR 128 Bs, validation chronos belonging to inmate Alton Encalade. Encalade? Encalade. He was previously validated as an active associate of the Mexican mafia. The investigator commented, it is not reasonable to believe Villa would be in possession of material belonging to a validated associate of the M and not be active with the M gang. Villa's actions of maintaining this information about this inmate shows a close personal tie with Encalade, who is a validated associate. So then it tells you what the 128B is. That's just information chrono, right? So they're not taking time off. You know, if you blast somebody, you get a 115. If you get into a mutual combat, you get a 115. You lose a little bit of good time. Maybe you can get some of that back. Maybe you can't. But it's a write-up. It's a disciplinary thing. A 128B is informational. Hey, I observed this inmate doing this. I observed this inmate doing that. You'll get those chronos when, if they're used against you when you're validated, they'll give you copies of those chronos, right? So that's what that is. And then the fourth source item is a confidential memo. The memo explains that an inmate identified Villa as having a position on the mesa of the inmate. The mesa is Spanish for table, which means, in the context of a prison gang, a governing body of influential inmates who have volunteered and agreed to enforce and direct gang activities within the prison for the benefit of the Mexican mafia. So I'm not going to go on and this is like 20 pages, right? But I will go on and explain a little bit how this plays out. Uh, the the drawing, interestingly enough, right? The drawing and the sketch stick in his validation, right? The court says, hey, these do show symbols that are related to this gang, and you have them, and this individual drew this. So, we got you on that, right? But these chronos that he has that belong to this other validated guy, when he was in the hole and he was helping, folks around him with their validation, that's how he got the chronos. And he was able to show how they were passed to me by a CO in the law library of the prison while we were all locked in a hole, right? Because he's validated. He's not very good at reading and writing, so I'm helping him. And a CO is the one that passed it from his little phone booth cage to my phone booth cage after looking at it to make sure, obviously, that we're not passing contraband. And the Title 15 does not say you're not allowed to help people with legal work. It says, in fact, that you can help people with legal work. You just can't be paid for it. You're not allowed to charge for it, and you still got to play by the rules of the prison, but that you can give legal advice and help people as necessary. So there's that part, right? Where the court, the CDC had said it's indicative of this role, and he's like, you can't tell me that in obeying one section of the Title 15, which says I can help people with legal work, I'm automatically violating another part of it, which says that I'm doing gang shit. Right? It's not gang shit, it's legal shit. There's a difference. There's a history of people being validated for doing legal work. Um, so he winds up getting those tossed, and then the mesa thing, right, of him sitting on the mesa. It's funny because another document which I'll link to in the description, you guys can read. Via outlines how that memo stating supposedly some confidential source identified him as being on the mesa, that wasn't in his C file a month after it was dated. That was put in there retroactive, right? That was put in there to seal the deal in his validation while he was in a hole, and they backdated it to March. What they didn't know is he had had his C file reviewed in April already. And in April, that wasn't there. And it would have been seen if it was truly there in March. So they faked the paperwork, right? Seems to be a theme. Or via, right? They faked the paperwork and threw that in there retroactive to try to get him. But the court said there's no direct link, right? You're not saying who he was on the mesa with. You're not saying any of that. So there's no direct link to an actual member. And the legal stuff doesn't count. So it looks like from this, he wound up beating his validation. Now, I beat my validation a couple times, but never got out of the SHU program because as soon as you beat them on one level, they turn around and say, well, you're under investigation. We're going to keep you here. And then all they got to do is turn around with another document. That's what they did to me. I had some 1030s thrown out. They brought in new 1030s. Like in that time frame in CDCR, if they wanted to keep you in the hole, they were going to keep you in there, and there really wasn't shit you could do about it. Interesting. It's interesting. Like I said, you guys let me know if this is something that you'd want me to explore more. Um, Shout out to Robert Villa for fighting his validation, right? A lot of us did that. I wouldn't consider myself a jailhouse lawyer. I know that people have referred to me that way. I think it's a huge compliment. I think it's one I don't deserve, one that I didn't live up to. I did legal work in prison. There are some real jailhouse lawyers though, that far surpassed what I was able to do. I think in terms of YouTube, I think Chad Marks is a great example of a jailhouse lawyer, right? Obviously, he's not in jail anymore, thankfully, but he did real jailhouse lawyer shit. You know, I fought validations. I did habeas petitions. Wasn't a lawyer, but there you have it. They would try anything to get you off the yard if they wanted to, and they'd use the most Rudy Poot ass things to then turn around and declare that you're a part of this elite group that requires these ridiculous conditions of confinement. And it worked for decades and decades, man. It worked on a lot of folks. And that's the part that I think sometimes doesn't get communicated to you guys as much. When you hear about validation and SHU and prison gangs, uh, they don't always get the full picture. But really, what it comes down to bring it full circle, this shit ain't got nothing to do with dubs, right? And again, I think I've been consistent. Putting out bogus paperwork on people is out of pocket, and this is an example of that. No matter how you slice it, Just be careful. Careful what you're listening to out there. Uh, some people will say anything, and I don't know. I think it's fucking weird, man. Anyways, help others move in excellence. That's what homies do. Help yourself at the same time because you're worth it. Help your community because they need you. Let me know in the comments what else you guys want to hear about. What kind of subjects you want me to tackle moving forward, and we'll be back at it tomorrow, man. Take care.